Greetings and durud. Welcome to Farhang Connect. I am Alireza Ardekani, CEO of Farhang Foundation. We are a non-political, non-religious, not-for-profit organization that thrives with the support of its members. Our sole mission is to celebrate and promote Iranian art and culture, enriching the global community. Today, we are honored to welcome our esteemed guest, the brilliant author and champion of contemporary art, Ms. Leila Heller, who will be joined in conversation by fellow author, cuisine goddess, and columnist, Ms. Naz Deravian. Leila Taghinia-Milani Heller is president of Leila Heller Gallery, a contemporary art gallery with bases in New York and Dubai. With food, art, and culture, she bridges the gap between East and West. She has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Art News, Art in America, Forbes, and the Financial Times. Her highly praised, beautiful new book, Persian Feasts, Recipes and Stories from a Family Table, is published by PHAIDON Press, and it has been winning over fans around the world with its magnificent family recipes and touching stories. This exquisite book is more than a collection of recipes. It is a deeply personal homage to Ms. Heller's beloved late mother, Ms. Nahi Taghinia-Milani, whose culinary legacy lives on through the 100 cherished recipes featured in the book. Each recipe, lovingly preserved and artfully presented, reflects the warmth, elegance, and hospitality that define the doyenne Ms. Taghinia-Milani's legendary table and home. Today, Ms. Heller will be joined in conversation by none other than Ms. Naz Deravian, the award-winning author behind the best-selling book, Bottom of the Pot, Persian Recipes and Stories. Ms. Deravian's work has helped elevate the voice of Iranian home cooks around the world. Naz is a Los Angeles-based writer and regular contributor to the New York Times food section. Her work has been nominated for a James Beard Award, and she has contributed to the Washington Post, The Atlantic, the Los Angeles Times, and the San Francisco Chronicle, among other publications. Bottom of the Pot was the recipient of the IAACP Julia Child First Book Award presented by the Julia Child Foundation. It has also won the Taste of Canada Gold Award for Best Regional Cookbook, as well as the Food 52 Piglet Award. Please note that we will be holding a Q&A session at the end of today's conversation, so please do submit your questions for our guests through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Now, it is my great pleasure to welcome our guests. Please give a warm virtual welcome to our amazing Leila Heller and the fabulous Naz Deravian. Welcome, Leila Jan.
It was a pleasure to be in this amazing conversation with you and with Naz, who I admire so much. Loving her cookbook and admiring her title more than anything. I love that title. It's such a catchy, wonderful book, beautiful pictures, great recipes, and I am so honored to be with both of you on this panel and at Farhang Foundation, which is very dear to my heart. Ali Razi, started this fabulous foundation, dear friend of mine, and it just really has been an amazing gathering place for everything Persian, our culture, our education, amazing exhibitions, festivals, all the above. And you're amazing, Alireza Jun, with what you've brought to Farhang. And I cannot thank you enough for inviting me to feature Persian Feasts.
Thank you so much. It's our honor to have you here. And I want to also welcome Naz Jan for joining us today. We've had the pleasure of having her on Farhang Connect before, and it's always a pleasure to have her back. Welcome, Naz.
Thank you, Alireza Jun. I'll take it from here. I would like to welcome everybody. Thanks to Farhang Foundation, to Alireza Jun for having us today. The honor is all mine, Leila John. I love your book. It's beautiful, and I want to dive right in because I have so many questions for you. Let's start with the cookbook itself. You come from a background in the art world, you're an art gallerist. So, what led you to publish a cookbook, or even what was the seed that started this for you that made you think, I'm going to write a cookbook?
Well, my mom, my mother, Nahi Taghinia-Milani, she was always the most amazing chef, having learned from her mother and grandmother, and then from my three aunts who brought a whole nother direction towards cooking, which was, they were born in Samarkand and, with touches of Uzbekistan in their cooking. So, and in different recipes, you can see that. So she learned from all of them. She was 18 when she got married, and my father's family was all about eating and food, and a lot of it. Like on Fridays, we would all gather 20 people and celebrate life with so much food and sharing. So she already, way before 1979, had that idea in her mind. And she knew Her Majesty Farah Pahlavi from her childhood. So, she would send Persian treats during Nowruz to her. And so she encouraged her to start a Persian cookbook. And this is way before the revolution. So she always had it in her mind. And then the revolution happened. And so it took years to start this journey again. But she was very organized. She had all her recipes written in Farsi and or in a notebook, a very thick notebook. And then she would even say in it, like, this recipe, I had it in so and so's home, and then made my own version or not. So this journey started a long time ago. And then once I had a book launch at my gallery for Gisu Hari and Mojgan Hariri, architects with Rizzoli, and they asked her to write a cookbook at some point. So, but then my dad got very sick, and so she then was very occupied with that. Then she started it again. And so when she was suddenly, she passed away, um, it was like so sudden. I didn't even realize how in depth her cookbook had progressed. We really had a real cookbook in there in Farsi. So when she passed away, my very dear friends, Leila Sharif, and Laya Khajavi and Bahar Tavakkolian, and many other of our group of friends in New York at her memorial gathered around me and said, we need to keep Nahidjun's legacy. And we need to do something about this cookbook. And everybody offered to do something about bringing this cookbook to life. None of us were authors. None of us had ever written a book in our lives. And it really was for the sheer love and respect for my mom that the whole community came together to do this. And then COVID happened. So we thought, well, what to do. And then we sort of like were busy with our lives. We're all working women. And it sort of got a bit delayed until my friend Deborah Black, who's the publisher of PHAIDON, called me and said, we need a Persian cookbook and you have to do it. At first I resisted. I said, I'm so busy. I'm crazy between two galleries and all that. And so I sort of declined for a little bit, sent her all the Persian cookbooks. She said, no, I want you to write it because I want Nahid Jun's food, which we had at her home all the time. So I said, well, I can't write this book on my own. There's a few of us who want to contribute. So we've never had a book that has been, written by other people, just one author. Well, I said, well, I can't. We're all so busy. I need help with this. And also, these friends of mine They really cooked with my mom. Their moms were my mom's best friends. They grew up with my mom and they saw her cooking. I just cooked in parallel with her. So if there was a party that she or I were giving, I would do 6 dishes. She would give 6 dishes, but I never cooked with her except when I was a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, that I had my own pots and pans and I would cook with her. And I knew a lot of things by heart because I did them with her. And hence why in university, my freshman year, I was asked to do a national dish. And those days you couldn't call home and say, Mom, send me the recipe or tell me the recipe. You had to have 40 quarters and put it in the payphone to try and get a appointment to talk to Iran. So I just made it and it was as delicious as my mom's because I had cooked with her those dishes. So anyhow, long story short, I insisted on the four of us talking to the publisher and to Deborah. And so when Leela, Bahar, and Laya started talking, it was like a storybook. We all said our own version of Nahi June, her life, our experiences, and Emilia Teragni, the publisher, was like, this is a storybook. It's going to be, if we do it, I like the idea of doing a cookbook, but it has to be a storybook as well as a cookbook. So then we started to work. It was COVID, very, very hard. Zoom calls only. We couldn't see each other. We couldn't practice. We couldn't try. So the same recipe was done by the four of us over and over again as trials. And then we got 10 of our other friends involved, Laya's sister, Roya, who also helped us with the menus, and so many other amazing people and friends got involved. And I wanted it to be a community cookbook, not just, our cookbook. So we got everyone, like my mom's best friends, aunts, uncles, everybody, cousins, and best friends of my mom, people who she loved, who she always discussed food with or cooked with, to be included. And so some of these recipes, even though my mom had her own versions, we used her best friends or families' recipes just to have a community cookbook.
That in the introduction, you mentioned that this is essentially a love letter to your dear mother, Nahi June. May I call her Nahi June?
Absolutely. We all called her Night June.
And I love the idea of this being a community cookbook, and that love, admiration, and respect permeates throughout the book with individual memories from each author and also your family members. But then there are also essays, historical essays on Iranian history and art as well. The book opens with a lovely essay by your son. Is that correct? He's your son.
That's correct.
And my question to you is, the title is Persian Feasts, and you talk about the sense of community. So this idea of feasting is very prominent in our cultural lives and cuisine itself. So can you talk a little about what feasting and celebration meant to your mother and how she liked to share that with her community, and how that reflects in your own life now, and and continuing what your mother started? What is this concept of feasting in our culture?
Well, feasting, Iranian food is always in abundance. So let's say a American tourist, European tourist goes to a random small village in Iran, and they are guests there, staying or passing by. And people are so hospitable. People are so inviting, even if they don't know who the person is. But they say, come to my house for dinner tonight. And even if they don't have the means to make a elaborate feast or meal, yet they cook with abundance And they do the best they can. If they can afford chicken, they add to it. If it's meat, it's meat. But they make a huge plate of big rice, that's made with vegetables or fruits or you name it. And they don't even feed their family, but they ask the guests to be the guests and to be served first. And if there's food left, then they give it to their children or family. That's the spirit of Persians and Iranians. We are very hospitable, and we always, when we cook, even for just when I cook for my husband and I, we could literally live on it for 3 more days. But I send it to the doorman of the building, or I give it to my sons to take home, or, we don't know how to cook for one person. There's the story about the hamburger in my cookbook where my son calls my mother and says, "Can I come over for dinner tonight? And is it going to be just the two of us?" And she said, "Yes, I'll cook for you. What do you want?" He said, "I want hamburgers." And her hamburgers were so special with cumin seed and cumin powder and a lot of onions and, maybe sometimes chopped peppers and all that. So, and my son arrived and there are 13 hamburgers. And my son said, "But I thought we were going to be alone. I wanted to talk to you." He wanted to tell her that he's moving to Hong Kong. Good job opportunity had come up. So, and then she said, "Well, yeah, it was just the two of us." He said, "Why do we have 13 hamburgers?" He said, "Well, don't worry. I don't know how to cook for one person. I know how to cook for a group and a big feast. And so I'll share it later, the rest with the doorman." So that's the spirit of us Persians to begin with. Even if we've become, Americans and we're in westernized, yet we still cook in abundance. And this is something that took me a long time to explain to PHAIDON, because PHAIDON, at the end of the day, they have their own chefs do the cooking, and then they take pictures. But like there was a little fish fillet, and there was, let's say, a korma sabzi in a little bowl, and a rice that was, once the pictures came in, we said, "No, this is not Persian cooking. Persian cooking, it doesn't matter what it tastes like, if it's good or bad. It's that the amounts are so sparse." And then so they went and bought a half a fish fillet. No, we want a whole fish, a big 4 to 4 pound fish. That doesn't, it's not what we do. We know only how to cook a whole fish. So it took me a while to, I was talking about abundance and feasting, and abundance and feasting. And I also was very aware of stories like how, the courts of Shah Abbas had really, the courts during that time had real feasts, but abundance of food for like 100 people every night. And Portuguese ambassador to Iran, Persia at the time, had written a book on his time in Iran, and most of it was all about feasting and these huge, elaborate mounds of rice and chicken and beef and lamb and turkey and you name it, fish, everything, in abundance. And so they used to call khoresh, those days, the Persian stews, they used to call them qaliye. And that's how, like, if you read books from the 16th century written on that, they were all referred to qaliye, which, in our contemporary times, we say qaliye mahi, but it means khoresh mahi, or fish stew. So, but during the Safavid times, it started, the feasting started, and hence why I thought that it would be so wonderful to get the help of scholars who know ancient Iran, Persepolis. If you look at Persepolis, you see all these huge trays of food etched into, the stone and all that exists still, even though the palaces were burned, yet we have the remnants of all of that. It's all these people carrying huge trays of food on their heads. So then this goes on and continues throughout the Persian history, food and art. It's in so many of our architecture, and it's so many of our paintings. You look at for instance, the Qajar period, you have so many still lives of food, like inspired by a 17th century Dutch painting of vanitas and still lives. And the Qajars did a lot of still lifes. So you have that, so we have all amazing scholars that contributed to our book, talking about feasting during these different periods of book. And there is this amazing book that came out besides our book, which was about art, but art of feasting, which Dr. Linda Kamroff, the curator for Islamic art and Middle East in LACMA, who did this book that came out just a year ago. And it's an amazing portraiture of feasting in the courts. So this was a very old and traditional and long time thing to have the idea of feasting. So then PHAIDON, I talked so many times about feasting, my co-authors and I, that they finally got the message, and we wrote this book, The Persian Feasts, and it's sort of in this smaller title. It says it's the family recipes of a, family. So, and our little community.
And I think what you pointed on too that I really like is that feasting doesn't have to be this, it's an abundance, but it's also an abundance of the thought and feeling and love that you put behind it. So it doesn't, even if you don't have the means, it doesn't have to be a table of 10 different dishes, but it's really how you show up at the table, which is that Iranian innate sense of hospitality, generosity, and love of feeding and taking care of others and showing your appreciation through food. And I think you touch on that beautifully on the book, in the book as well. You talk about your mother's lineage, Nahijun's lineage from Azerbaijan province, and you and I share this because my mother and her family also are from Azerbaijan province in Iran, and and your mom is from a very distinguished lineage. And in the book, you talk about the palace. There was a palace and this beautiful fresco, if I'm not mistaken, on the ceiling, correct?
Yes.
This is so amazing to have this. Can you talk about this fresco, where it was, if it's still there, if it's still standing, and what this represents to your family, but to the Iranian culinary world in general, at large?
Absolutely. My great grandfather, the Sardar of Maku, he used to hunt with the Tsar of Russia at the time. And he would go to his palace in St. Petersburg. And, he loved that palace, the hunting palace. And he told the Tsar, and the Tsar sent 40 architects, builders, and then they merged with some of the Iranian ones, and they made this little home. I mean, it's not a little home, it's a big home for the Sardar. So that home is called the Bakhchijuk Palace. And Bakhche, as you know, in Farsi is the same word, is garden. And Juk means, in Armenian, I think, it's like a village. So this was the little Bakhche Palace, Bakhchijuk Palace in Maku, which is in northern Iran on the border. And so basically, I remember when we were kids, we would go to the to the roof of this home, and we could see Turkey on a good day when everything was clear, and it was in mountainous areas, so the air was always clear. You could see Turkey and Russia, and hence the Makui family or Khanat Maku, they were guardians of the border, and even my own grandfather, before he was exiled by Reza Shah to Tehran and became one of the ministers of parliament, he was the head of the army. They had 3,000 people. So there was a lot of fiefdoms around Iran before Reza Shah came. And he consolidated the country. And so that's how, these fiefdoms sort of, moved. He brought the son of whoever it was, or the nephews and the men, back to Tehran and gave them high positions. And the Reza Shah gave the title of Salar Lashkar, to my grandfather, Hamdullah Pasha Khan, who was Salar Lashkar. So he gave that title to him, and but they had that army. Then it was consolidated into Iran and in the Iranian army. All these, like the Qashqais, the Bakhtiaris, they all had, the Baluchis, they all had their own little fiefdom. And the reason, I mean, I don't know what become political, but the reason was because the Qajar, in the last years of the Qajar dynasty, the Qajar kings were not very active. And so everybody was attacking Iran. Russia attacked Iran and got half of Azerbaijan. If not, Azerbaijan was much bigger. So current day Azerbaijan and our Azerbaijan in Iran were one state. So, and we started losing because the English had introduced opium into Iran. And so the main government was sleeping, technically. So that's why we had all these fiefdoms. But Reza Shah brought everybody together, and we know Iran of today, what it is or what it was, is what he did. So this palace is a mixture of Russian architecture and Iranian architecture. The first gramophone in Iran was brought to this little palace, as it's called. And you have a lot of tourism in that area because Qara Kilisa, or the Church of Tatavus, which is the biggest shrine of Armenians, is like a 5-minute drive to this palace. So you have every year a lot of tourists. So since everybody had moved to Iran, nobody was living in that palace since Iqbal al-Saltaneh, who was the last Sardar of the Makui clan, of the Khanat of Maku, and he died in prison after the revolution of Reza Shah. So then this house was falling a little bit into disarray, and my family donated it to this Iranian state in 1974, and it was turned into a museum, and it's very actively open right now. So my ancestors have gone to Paris and brought the furniture, and some from Russia. So there's a mixture of French and Russian furniture there in this palace. And there were also the statues of like 19th century versions of Venice de Milo with a head, though, Venus in the Louvre. It's, like prototypes of Greek sculptures. There were like 8 of them on each side, or 6 of them in each side as at the entrance. But the funny thing is that we were so worried that after the revolution, that because there was a little nudity with togas around them, that they would be destroyed. But interestingly enough, we got a book on Western Azerbaijan that was published, 10 years ago. And when a family member brought it to us, to Dubai and New York, these statues all are still there intact, but they're wearing rupush. So they're covered, only their faces show. But that is actually quite amazing that in Iran, during any uprising, we've preserved the art and the culture rather than destroying it. All the museums that were made in the 70s are all existing, all active, and all open. So that's shows our culture and how art and culture are very meaningful to our people. And these belong to the people of Iran. So the fact that they were preserved was fantastic. So the story of the fresco, that is a fresco on the ceiling of the dining room. And it's about the Muahede Golestan, the Treaty of Golestan, where Russia was going to take over most of Azerbaijan, all of it. And my ancestors negotiated in this treaty to keep most of Azerbaijan intact in Iran. So that's the treaty that it was. So you see the Iranians sitting on the right, they're all men. They're sitting on the floor with a sofre, with full of mounds of rice and food and chicken and beef and everything. And the Russians are sitting with men and women on the left with goblets of wine and also, but in much more minimal food. Uh, and all around these gathering in these two sort of dining settings are the fruits and the vegetables that were prominently grown in Azerbaijan. So it's very historical work, in my opinion. My mother always said that if one day her cookbook comes out, that will be the front cover and the back cover of her book. But PHAIDON, being the biggest food cookbook publisher in the world, has a rule: no pictures, only designs, no figured, no pictures of food or people or anything. So that's why it's in the cookbook, but it's not, and it's actually, it was not even the first edition of the book. The book was published in September 7th, and 21,000 copies sold out in 3 weeks. So they had to reprint it quickly, and not time to change much, except they included that book that had been sort of, once it got to the editor in London, it didn't get into the book due to space, but I insisted on this for the second edition. Also, the French edition sold out too, and so now they're printing the second edition as well.
I love this fresco because I think it speaks to, we always talk about the role of food in our cultures, varying cultures, but this also speaks to two different factions coming together, and it's represented through a meal or a feast, if you will. And I think we can take a lot from that these days. I have always felt that it's not like food and cooking will solve our big world problems, but at least it can bring us to the table and to a conversation. I want to talk about the red borscht in the recipe for the red borscht in the book. And this speaks to your father's side of the family. And I love this story, if you can tell it, about his sisters and how they felt about him marrying your mother.
My aunts were very tough on my mom. God bless their souls. They were very tough on her, and they kept saying that our brother is going to go hungry with your cooking, and you have to learn the Uzbeki Iranian cooking of their version. So
if I may interrupt you right there, Leila John, I think it's actually quite funny that they would think that an Iranian woman that someone would go hungry with an Iranian woman's cooking.
Well, that's what they told her, literally, that you've got to learn our food, which, because they were born and raised in Uzbekistan. And only when the Bolsheviks came, they had to go into hiding. And for 10 years, they went from house to house. My grandfather fled to Shanghai, where his brother, my father's family had the biggest tea factory in all of Russia. And so one brother was in Mumbai, in Bombay those days, sending the tea leaves to Samarkand. And one brother was in Shanghai, sending the tea leaves from Shanghai to Samarkand. And then my grandfather would, in his factory, package them and, you know, market them in beautiful, boxes and all that, and then sell it. So my grandfather fled to Shanghai as the Bolsheviks were after him. So he went, he took him 5 years to establish himself there and get a house, and came to pick up his family, my grandmother and 6 kids. And he had a heart attack in Kandahar and on the way and died. So that's when the family left for Iran, where several uncles had moved after the revolution. So Uzbeki food, or let's say Russian, Persian food, or even influences of Turkish food are very prominent in Samarkand. And so this is a borscht that is different a little bit than the Eastern European pure Russian borscht. So it has tomatoes in it, and red cabbage, and veal or beef cubes, and potatoes, carrots, celery. So, and yes, they use sour cream, we use mostly yogurt. So this is the version. The Turks use yogurt too. And so another dish that they taught her was called dushware, which in Turkey is called manti. And it's like little butterflies, or you raviolis technically. And we learned as kids how to make these dushwares, the little raviolis that you do with chopped meat and dill, and make them, and then put it in the soup and have it with yogurt, mix it with yogurt and dill. So then my aunts also taught her how to make piroshkis. But again, their version, it's very different than the piroshkis you find in Poland or in Russia. So there's a lot of influence of Azerbaijani, yet Uzbeki cuisine mixed with Turkish and Russian that my aunts did, that they taught to my mother.
And I'm sure your mother won them over with her own cooking as well.
That she sure did, because then when my uncle died, then we hosted all the Friday gatherings, and she was an amazing chef from the beginning. Yes.
I noticed throughout the book, with everyone's recollections of your mother's famous, dinner parties and feasts, there's a through line of a specific celebration, and it's very much an American celebration, Thanksgiving. Everyone seems to recollect Nahi Jun's Thanksgiving meals, which included, if you could tell us about Nahi Jun's Thanksgiving meals, and I would like to know if you carry on that tradition as well, and how she incorporated Iranian dishes as part of this feast that is mostly, in North America.
Yes, indeed. As a matter of fact, it was my mom's favorite celebration of the year, of any kind of, you know, we moved to America. I mean, I was in America, my brother was, but my parents moved to America. And so, but that was her favorite because it was for everyone. It was for all immigrants, and it was for all Americans, but also every immigrant there did their own version of Thanksgiving. And for my mother, this was the most important holiday besides Nowruz. But Nowruz, we worked, my kids were in school, whereas Thanksgiving, we were all there as a family. And this was sacred. None of us could miss her Thanksgivings. And she was very adamant about that. But what could you do if one of my sons is in college, and it's Nowruz. They can't leave and fly back to New York to have Nowruz. So that's why this holiday was so dear to her. And the same, and it was open. She would open the door to whoever didn't have a place to go to for Thanksgiving. But there were, a lot of our dear friends who were there every year, like the Arabais and, all the children of friends who didn't have a place to go because their parents lived in a different city in America or in Europe, and their kids were in school in America. So it was open to everyone. And especially if there were widows or people who didn't have, a home to go to, she would invite.
Are
And it
there
was,
are there specific dishes in the book
yes,
that
they
were
were.
part of her Thanksgiving feast?
It definitely were. So some of them are in the book. So she would make the cherry rice, she was known for her cherry rice. And her cherry rice is a little different than most cherry rices. And it's a little few tricks she had with her cherry rice that made it so delicious and special. So the cherry rice was besides the turkey that was stuffed with a lot of Persian spices. She had a advieh, that spices, that the recipe is in the back of the book. And that was a mixture of rose petal that I always would bring from Dubai, let's say, or we would be sent from Iran, the real rose petals that were used in that spice mix, turmeric, cinnamon, cumin, cardamom, and this was her secret. She used it in so many of her recipes and khoresh and rices and stews. So her cherry rice is full of that spice, and her turkey stuffing was full of that spice. She used chestnuts, she used celery, she used many different kinds of herbs, and she used this dressing as well, and chopped mushrooms. And so she used her turkey was very aromatic, but with Persian spices. You knew she was cooking when you got off the elevator and would walk to her home. You knew there was something going on, and you smelled this. To this day, when my kids come home, they say, "We know what you're making." So
Sounds
that was what was special. The other thing is that she would have the cherry juice after she would saute the cherries. She would keep some of the juice to sprinkle all over the rice. So her cherry rice was actually, besides having all the spice and the saffron, was red too. And I still sprinkle some of the juice of the cherry and the cherry syrup that comes from sauteing the cherries into the rice. And it makes it this beautiful deep red, you know, a deep red color. And she would sprinkle the top with chopped pistachios. It was unique, her cherry rice. And her, stuffing, as I said, was also very different taste and spice. And she would put cloves into the turkey, and then would take them out once the turkey was ready. And she would make this very special fennel. It was her own invention. Fennel, leeks, and celery root puree that she would serve. It's in the cookbook as one of our vegetables. And she would always, for dessert, do this, her version of caramelized pears or apples, that was made with pure honey, butter, and nothing else. And sometimes she would make her halva, which is made with carrots. It's a beautiful color of yogurt, of yellow in the halva. So usually Persian halvas are all very dark brown. Hers are yellowish brown, which is very appetizing. And it's actually delicious to use carrots in the halwa. It was her own invention. She always went to restaurants, and if she liked something, not for halwa in particular, and she made her own version of things. So she always didn't like the fact that her halwas were too dark. So she came up with adding carrots to it.
The photo of the carrot and saffron halwa is truly spectacular in the book. With your background in the fine arts uh, and the art world, how involved were you in the design process, photography, food styling, props of the book?
So, very funny. This is a funny story. Well, when PHAIDON, who their rule is to do it in the chef's kitchen, did the cooking, then Leila and Bahar and I, once we got the pictures, we were like, what? This is not Persian. It's not a Persian feast. It's not a Persian, so we, in collaboration with them, decided that, and they made a huge, exception for us to do the cooking at my home. And so basically, every dish is made at home, and all the backgrounds are my tablecloths or Laya's tablecloths or Roya's or Lila's or Bahar's, and all the props are like our shawl, my shawls or their shawls or something or dishes that we used. So my mom collected a lot of silver, so there was a lot of silver, but then we used a lot of other dishes that we sort of put together, our own group of friends dishes, and used them to make it more Persian-esque with more Persian designs. I even ordered a lot of, dishes from Amazon for the purpose of shooting. And we were so lucky because PHAIDON gave us some choices of photographers to use. And Nico Shinko, who is amazing, who does a lot of the covers of the food section of the New York Times, he was the photographer we chose, and we were over the moon with him. And he has done several cookbooks, but for himself or others. And he's a brilliant photographer. And he and Kate, who was a stylist who joined us for each recipe and every shoot, stylizing it, as to the right light and right setting and right background. It was a real effort from all of us together with my co-authors to make this beautiful cookbook, and with the help of PHAIDON, who was really supportive of our crazy ideas all the time.
Yes, the photos, the styling and the photos are truly, they look like pieces of art. So something you could hang in your home. Leila John, let's get right to the food. This is a two-part question. What is, and I know this is, people ask this of me and it's like picking children, but if you were to pick a favorite recipe from the book, what would you pick? And then also, if someone is new to Iranian cuisine, or perhaps is Iranian but new to your book, what is a dish, a recipe that you would recommend as a starter, as something that they could get their hands, they could make it at home without having to stress about it a lot? So two parts. What is your favorite recipe, and then a starter recipe?
I mean, albalu polo was my mom's signature dish. That is a favorite. Fesenjun is another favorite that I love because she used at times duck whenever we could get our hands on, now you can get it all over the place. Duck is everywhere in every butcher, and you can order it from D'Artagnan, and it's there the next day. And they have very good quality duck. So when she made it with duck, it was quite special. And with chicken, it's fabulous. And as my friend Nazi Beglari, who did we went for a Nowruz in Abu Dhabi to Nazi Beglari's home, and she made it with aubergine with eggplant. And it is delicious, but it's vegetarian because Nazi is a vegan. So, but her cuisine is amazing. And oh my God, the feasts at their home during Nowruz and other Thanksgiving, which are all vegan, but the most delicious Persian vegan food. You wouldn't even notice. You forget that there's no meat or chicken or lamb in it. So, so I think her Fessenjun is amazing, and I remember when I was doing the Fessenjun, Alaya always said, "My God, Leila and Leila and Bar," and say, It got your mom's was much darker, much darker." So then I figured out that I had to roast and saute the walnuts much more, so that they're almost black to achieve that color. And plus, with the pomegranate molasses, roba anar, it became then, a very dark. My children grew up calling it chocolate chicken. So that's the name in our home for, when I work with Maria, who works with me in the kitchen, I always would say, "Maria, today on the menu is chocolate chicken," because that was the way of expressing it. Everybody knew which one it was. So, but I would say that abgusht would be the easiest recipe in the book to make. And the reason is it's just plain water. And I mean, I do meat broth in it, but you can start with plain water, put a few lamb shanks, or if not, in Iran, I remember when the workers would make a little fire in front of a construction site and put a few logs and make their lunch. It would be water, onions, chickpeas, potatoes, tomatoes. And so if they could afford it, they would put beef or lamb or chicken in it. But if not, they would put pea. Pea is the fatty part of a sheep's tail. In the reason why Persian lamb tastes so good is because Iran is a mountainous country. And so the lambs climb hills and mountains. So all the fat comes out of the muscles and goes into the tail. So you have a huge, big tail behind each sheep that's pure fat. Whereas, like, the meat itself is fatless. And so that's why Persian lamb is so delicious. The closest that comes to that lamb that doesn't smell, but it's pure lamb, is Australian lamb. So when I'm in America or in Dubai, I cook with Australian lamb and lamb shanks. So if you can't get Persian meat, which you can't most places. So so in any case, so that is an easy recipe. You just basically pour it all in the pot. You make that fabulous unctuous broth that you can have with the vegetables and the potatoes and the chickpeas and the tomato and the onions that are in there. Or you save half, as my mother did. She would keep the broth and she would mash the lamb shank meat with the chickpeas and the tomatoes and the potatoes, and it became a very nurturing and delicious paste, chunky paste, because she would do it with a fork or not in a blender. And it was very delicious. So we would, in our lunch boxes to school, we would take a sandwich of this concoction to school.
Delicious.
Or if we went skiing to Shemshak or Gajere, we would take that as a sandwich with us, with a few slices of Persian torshie, khiyar, with cucumbers, and then on it, and we would have a real, complete, nutritious meal.
And for those who are unfamiliar, it's the consistency is like refried beans. If you think of refried beans, that's what the consistency of this mashed up meat and potatoes and chickpeas, and that's what it would be like. Um,
Yeah.
is there
The
another
other
dish?
recipe I would use would be just the pure lamb shanks. It's so easy, and people love my mom's lamb shanks and mine. So it's again very versatile, very easy to make. So you chop onions, saute it until it's golden, then you add the lamb shanks, and you add a little water, and you, on a low flame, you cook it for 4 hours, or if you're in more of a rush, you do it in 2 hours, and you add turmeric, salt, and pepper, and that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And it's so easy to make. It just take time consuming. You should just cover the pot and let it cook, and the juice goes in it, and it just falls off the bone.
Delicious.
So that is a very easy recipe to make. The way we Azerbaijanis made the lamb shank was this way, or we would add yogurt that was thick, that we would have used in a cloth, like a sieve type cloth, that all the water would drain. I remember when we were kids, my mother every night would put the fresh yogurt into one of these cloths and hang it on a cloth line, like where you dry your clothes after washing them. We didn't have washing machines those days. So she would hang it on a with a pin on a cloth, and by the morning it would become a thick yogurt.
We started the conversation about feasts and feasting and the importance of this in Iranian culture and cuisine. Here we are in the 21st century, and our lives are different than, how maybe you and I were raised in Iran, and people live in different parts of the world and country. But what would you suggest for a successful dinner party to bring your loved ones, your friends, and back to your community together? What would be one or two tips that you would have, and using your book to throw a successful dinner party in the spirit of Nahi Jun, but also your own touch?
I use a lot of my own touches, and I think that after cooking the four of us together, I use a little bit of Laya's touches, Leila's touches, Bahar's touches. We were sisters always, but we became like a real tiny little family together, exchanging ideas daily. Even though we weren't on a Zoom call, we would write each other, do things together. So um, it's all about absorbing, and learning every day. But to give a feast, which I do regularly, because first of all, I cook for all my gallery dinners in New York. 80 people, 90 people, 60 people, 50 people. And so basically, I do my shopping the day before, except for the fish, which I do the same day. And so I have it all ready, cleaned, washed. Some things that don't go bad, I chop the day before. But I do 10 to 12 dishes. And if I have a dinner party, same, anywhere between 8 or 9 to 12 dishes I do. And it's become a science technically after so much practicing. My mom used to do. So like when I would have a dinner party at my gallery, she would make 6 dishes, I would make six. But now I have to do all. So Maria and I get up early in the morning and go for it and make a nice dish. But I believe that Persian food, one of the most important aspects of Persian food is the decoration. And, so an abundance of herbs on top of a fish, or let's say the stuffed fish that you have there that we discussed, that one is full of fruits and spices and nuts. So it's like a mahiyet shekampur. So it's full, the stomach of the fish is filled with all these amazing delicacies. You can put figs, you can put dried cherries, you can put real cherries, you can put dill, mint. I put usually tarragon, mint, and basil, and then cover it with thyme and rosemary. But inside the body of the fish, I put that and I saute barberries as well, and some chopped aloo, meaning dried plums, and some maybe dried apricots, and then put it, whatever I put in the kufte tabrizi, I put it in the stomach of and nuts, walnuts are delicious to go in there, or slivered pistachios and almonds. So, same thing, you know, I use I don't use in this fish recipe the advieh, the Persian spice that we make at home regularly. My mother used to do that, and it has a little touches of. In most of the time, we also add curry powder in some of the dishes with that mix the advieh with curry powder as well to give it a little taste of curry, but very lightly. It's not real strong curry. It's a milder taste of curry, but she loved that to use that. But decoration is key. Chopped, slivered um, pistachios, slivered almonds, cinnamon. We put it on the sholezard, or saffron pudding. We put it on so many of the soups that it would be nice to mix with a little bit, and ashes. We put cinnamon or spice on a lot of our rices, like the cabbage rice, all of that. So I think decorating the the dish is as important as the taste of it,
They
in
always
my opinion.
say they always say you eat with your eyes first. So
First, my mother believed in all five senses that went into her food.
yes.
She really believed in that.
Thank you so much, Leila June. We have a few questions. If you have more questions, please type them up in the question box and we'll try to get to them. There's a question regarding, is the cookbook published worldwide or only in USA? Can it be mailed or delivered to Iran? And what is the mechanism for delivery? So first part, is the cookbook published worldwide or only in the USA?
It's published worldwide. So technically, if I'm in Dubai, I there are bookshops that carry it. If I'm in Istanbul, the same. If I'm in Cairo, the same. In Europe, uh, we have a French publisher too. PHAIDON has a French version too that's published in France in French. And last Christmas holidays, Hermes, all the Hermes stores in Paris had the cookbook in their windows, and they sold out completely. So that's why our French version sold out very quickly. But in Iran, obviously, because it's published mainly, it's printed in China, but it's London is the headquarters of PHAIDON. They have offices in Paris, they have offices in LA, but they have offices in New York. But it can't be officially sent to Iran, but there is a bookstore in Iran that carries the book, I heard, and someone sent me a picture of it. I'm blanking about the name. Just it just like I knew it, but it's just escaped me. But apparently, even in that bookshop in Iran, you can get it. But
Wonderful.
you can get it on Amazon everywhere in the world.
And we have a link. If you go to the chats, you may order the book directly from the publisher via the link that Farhang has just put up.
Yes.
Will the book be published in paperback?
We haven't discussed that yet. It hasn't yet been a year since it's been published. So I think that's for the next meeting we're going to have with them. But I don't think PHAIDON ever has done a paperback book as such. They've done softer covers, but I don't think they have ever done that. And the cover was very meaningful to me too. That cover, that it be the right turquoise. I had to send my shawls, my little pomegranate turquoises, my jewelry, my everything in turquoise to get the right Persian blue of our mosques.
Which leads to the next question. It's more of a comment. It's from someone who asks, with your extensive background in the world of art, it is so impressive that you were able to write this impressive book. Don't you agree that cooking is just another format of art? These dishes featured in the book look like masterpieces.
That's a very kind compliment, and we're very thankful for this beautiful comment. But it really, for me, my life is so much about art that every piece, every, let's say, recipe, we decorated it like the way I would want to present it to my friends and family. And each one was, I discovered this very long, Kate, who was the stylist, she gave me as a present one of her, what do you call it, tweezers that are long. I'd never seen one. And she would pick a sliver of almond or pistachio and place it exactly perfectly with those tweezers. I would have to do it with a little fork, and sometimes it wasn't perfect. With these tweezers, it becomes perfection. And so and I was a painter too in college. So for me, it's like painting the canvas, the decoration of of the food. So going back, when I was in university, when I made that Persian dish for the international club, all my professors asked me to invite them to my home, which was a tiny little space with the tiniest little kitchen that I shared with another person who was next door to me. In university, you have bare minimums. But I would invite them and do a little Persian feast of a jawahir polo or shirin polo or lubia polo, something like that, that also could have chicken or meat in it. And they thought that it looked like my paintings, strangely enough. So I really decorate my dishes beautifully with this tweezer. Now that I have it, it makes it easier. And it's like the barberries are so tiny. How could you do them separately? Or on a little bowl of sholezat, the saffron rice pudding, how could you put the little slivers of pistachio or rose petal perfectly on the cinnamon so it doesn't come, on the left or right of the cinnamon line of cinnamon. So, yes, it's artistic what we do. And that hence why I asked these fabulous curators like Dr. Masume Farhad and, who contributed for the Safavid section of the book to get involved, because it's really about art. And regarding the cover of the book, a friend of mine, Dimitri of Yugoslavia, told me about this book called Ornaments that I ordered on Amazon, which has the borders and designs of Islamic art, of Assyrian art, Persian art, Iraqi art, Turkish art, Indian art. And so these borders are beautiful in this book written by an Englishman or American, about ornaments of these ancient cultures, Roman ornaments, Greek ornaments. And so, I brought that to the attention of PHAIDON and the designers. And so we did the book very much a little bit touches of Persian design.
It's a beautiful cover. A practical question, and I think we have to, this might be our last question. Which store, either online or chain store, can one purchase all the quality Persian spices and ingredients needed to make these recipes?
Honestly, Amazon. And of course, it depends which you live all in LA. It's all over. You have shops that have the most amazing ingredients and spices. London too, Paris too, New York too. We go to Calustians or some other Persian shops that are outside in Long Island, you know. But I think Amazon is so easy. I remember when my mom made her kashk badem June with chèvre cheese because there was no kashk in New York when she moved to New York. There was no kashk to be found. And there was no, it was not the day of internet or to even search where can I go to buy these spices. So we're lucky to, I buy my kashk, my pomegranate molasses, my abhoureh, which is called verjus. I buy my rose water, cooking rose water, all on Amazon. It's so easy. And if it's special, then yes, you go to Calustians, which has everything in New York of every like Indian, Japanese, but Arabic and Iranian. And I bring all my spices, when I travel back from Dubai, because there we have all the Persian stores. So I get all my spices and my herbs and all that that's dried from Dubai, because you basically have it in every supermarket.
I think wherever you might be in the world, but in North America in general, I highly encourage everyone to visit your Middle Eastern markets. There are Iranian markets, but there are Middle Eastern markets, there are Indian markets, and you'll be able to find most of these ingredients. And like Leila June said, you can get everything online now. So it's not that difficult. It might take just a little bit more work, but certainly not like how it was 40 years ago when you had to substitute, chèvre for kashk. So no excuses. We can make all these delicious foods and recipes from this book. Thank you so much, Leila June, for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you, getting to know Nahi June through your work and through the stories. Thank you all for joining us. I'll pass it to Ali Reza Jan.
And thank you for hosting me. And I thank you and Ali Reza June, and also you, especially as a, home cook like me, for, giving me this platform. And I'm really thrilled. And I thank you on behalf of my co-authors, Leila and Laya and Bahar as well, and from our whole Persian community. And also, I thank PHAIDON for this unbelievable opportunity as well. Thank you so much for this very beautiful talk.
Thank you both. I've been sitting here in the background, salivating and starving, looking at all these beautiful dishes. And luckily, I have the book here. And I really want to thank Leila Jan and Naz Jan for today's incredible conversation. We were honored to have you both with us. I must add that as a lifelong foodie and devoted fan of Iranian cuisine, it was a genuine personal pleasure to spend this past hour immersed in your delicious dialogue, so rich with flavor and heart. I wanted to thank and remind our viewers that if you don't already own Persian Feast, you may pick it up via farhang.org/feast or via the link in the chat that we shared earlier, or through any reputable retail sources like Amazon or your local bookstore. And I'm sure everyone already owns a copy of Bottom of the Pot, but if you don't, we highly recommend it, picking it up, this fantastic staple, if it's not already in your library. Please note that today's talk was recorded and will be made available on farhang.org, where you may watch this and all the many episodes of this series, including the last talk Naz Jan had with Andy Baraghani, which is there right now. As always, we invite you to visit farhang.org for all the latest upcoming events, talks, performances, and programs. Thank you to the audience for spending your Saturday with us and for joining us from across the globe. And we look forward to welcoming you next time. Until then, we bid you farewell. Thank you again, Leila John. It was a pleasure having you here. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Saturday. Same to you, Naz John. It was lovely to see you. We miss you both here. And we look forward to seeing you next time. We bid you farewell.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye.